It's an app that 1 in every 4 Indians use, and an app that I also use very regularly to make payments. In fact, I've just transferred some money using PhonePe to the founder and CEO of PhonePe, who we have right here, Sameer Nigam. Sameer, you have to return my 100 rupees with interest. I don't know if this means I'm on your cap table, but you know, it's an interesting experience transferring money to the founder of PhonePe using PhonePe.
Thanks,
Thank
Chandra.
you so much for joining us on our show Bits to Billions, where we track some of the most prominent founders in India. And you know, it's surreal when I think about it. PhonePe is not even 7 years old, and yet you have 360 million users, and you're tracking what, 3 billion transactions a month. You have a nearly 50% share in UPI, which is the most popular way in which people, you know, send money, make transactions today. When you founded PhonePe 7 years ago, you know, was this something that you envisioned that would happen in 2022? I mean, is it on track? Is it even bigger than you imagined?
It's definitely way bigger than we ever imagined. When Rahul and I started up, when we talked about digital payments in India, we were very excited about UPI, more as geeks, sort of open architecture, never been done anywhere in the world. If somebody had told me then that we'd have, in fact, 380 million now, we'd have nearly 400 million users 5-6 years after having launched an app of any kind, I don't think any entrepreneur in the world will tell you that you can expect that to happen. That takes a ton of luck, timing, serendipity, market forces. So many things have fallen in place. Demonetization happened shortly after UPI. All the banks came on board. The government put all of its might behind trying to promote UPI. India needed an alternative to Visa and MasterCard. COVID happened. There's been so many things that fell into place. So I think a lot of it was luck and timing. We've done our part in terms of making sure we scale well. But yeah, I mean, this is bigger than anything we'd ever imagined, to be honest.
Sameer, you know, we are also at a very difficult point in the Indian startup ecosystem. I mean, just last month or even earlier this month, we were celebrating 100 unicorns. And it suddenly seems like everything has churned so quickly. In the last weeks, you know, we've not been counting unicorns, we've actually been counting layoffs at various startups, including unicorns. I think, you know, 10 prominent startups, over 5,000 people have lost their jobs so far. How are things looking for you?
I think for us personally, I think we're pretty blessed because A, we have tons of capital runway. We have spoken over the years about the fact that we've stopped doing cashback about 3 years ago, regardless of what market share looks like. We spend a ton of time and effort on automation to keep the costs down, and we've been doing this for the last 6 years. So our P&L is in a very good shape. That's point number one. So I think internally, and we've addressed the company as well, we know kids get anxious when they're looking at what's happening in the market, especially our millennial Gen Z employees. And we were telling them that as long as the structure of the business is healthy, and ours is very healthy, knock on wood, we're not worried at all. That's point number one. Second, we do believe that a recession has to come, and has to come for a couple of reasons. There's a couple of $1 trillion that got printed in cash. And you can see even in the US, largest economy in the world, inflation's at double digits. A lot of that money went into private equity and VC funds. VC money has crossed about $4 trillion, unprecedented amount of capital, and we are the most attractive market because China is not very open to external capital, which means there's so much money chasing only a finite number of startups. We saw a unicorn every week last year, practically. I think about 50 odd unicorns. So when you have that much capital chasing businesses that are not fully matured yet, that are not stable yet, they've all hired very aggressively, as they should when the going is good. I mean, there's the startup cycle. You hire, you set a new sort of baseline, and then when the correction happens, there will be attrition, there will be a cost correction. My hope is, as an overall ecosystem, if we've gone from in a bell curve up, we don't come all the way down. We come down some and readjust.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, because I think these things are cyclical.
But even that's going to hurt, right? I mean,
it will hurt in the interim. It'll hurt businesses in their valuations. It'll hurt where capital deployment happens. I think the first thing that starts coming down is going to be advertising. Normally, what we've seen in cycles like this, 2000, 2008, people spend more on sales and less on marketing. You want to get revenues in, you don't want to build forward. And people clamp down on hiring first and then trim the fat. Now, the fact of the matter is, like any other industry, is not just the tech startup ecosystem, any industry, when you're growing at breakneck speed for a period of almost 2.5 years, you will have some fat. And I think that will get trimmed.
But what about you? Because I remember just barely a month ago, you said that, PhonePe is going to double the number of employees it has from 2,400 or to over 5,000. Are those plans on track? Will you perhaps pause on hiring in the current environment?
So we've onboarded into full-time employment 1,000 of our feet on street into full-time BDA roles just last week. These were the best of the best people who were going and putting QR codes and servicing our merchants across the country during COVID, and we promised them the best of the 10,000, 10%, we will give full-time employment. So we've done that. So that's one part of it, and we're very proud of it. We've completed 3 acquisitions last month. There's Gig India, there's Welldesk and OpenQ. And so that's the headcount addition there. We are entering another 6 or 7 business verticals this year. Stockbroking, we have a license. Account aggregator, we have a license.
Tell me what you don't have a license for. It's like you're just,
things that we'd be no good at today, right? Banking, don't have a license. I don't want to get in there.
That's going to be difficult in any case, getting a banking
I'm just saying
license.
that even if I had it on tap today, I would never apply because we don't have, we have to build our lending chops first, and that will take 4 to 5 years, right? The walk before you run principle applies, and this is, I think, one of the things that's put us in good stead. We are funding our future bets from our P&L plus the equity we raised in 2020, well before the bubble started. So we're in a good place. As far as doubling the headcount, I think we might actually go beyond doubling because we've added the 1,000 people on top plus the acquisitions.
So beyond doubling would be how much?
So I think we were 2,800 people when we'd made the announcement saying we'll go to about 5,500, add 1,000 BDAs, add about 400 or 500 people that will come in through inorganic acquisitions. So we'll probably end up at about 6,500. And that's factored into the plans all along.
No layoffs, no right sizing?
We've never done a layoff.
And you will not do it even in the current
During COVID, we never did a layoff. During COVID, we didn't have a single day where we didn't pay anybody. See, the thing is, if you're disciplined when the cycles are good and you don't raise money at frothy valuations, then you don't feel the pressure. We raised money at 5.5 billion post valuation. 4.8 actually was the pre-valuation in December 2020. That's before the madness started.
Yeah.
We still have most of that money in the bank. And so I don't need to raise and put that pressure on the org. If we had raised at some crazy valuation, we couldn't defend logically, then there would be a correction happening. And so that's why I think we go slow, we confuse people by that behavior, but we've never had to lay off. And I prefer that model to hiring really fast and having to lay off.
Slow and steady.
Yeah.
PhonePe's move to build at an unhurried and steady pace helped it steal a march over its rivals, cementing it as India's largest player when it comes to digital payments less than 7 years after being founded. Founded in December 2015, PhonePe has also had a very different journey compared to rivals who raised big VC money. Instead, it chose to work as an independent unit backed by Flipkart and now Walmart. Today, PhonePe has more than 360 million registered users, with 1 in 4 Indians now using it. It has digitized over 27 million offline merchants spread across tier 2, 3 and 4 cities and beyond. It's a leader in the Unified Payments Interface or UPI payments with a 47% share in monthly volumes. PhonePe has also been acquiring a bunch of licenses as it looks to become a financial services super app offering users everything from payments to insurance to wealth management to stockbroking to commerce.
Sameer, as you said, you are diversifying your offerings and, from payments, insurance has been a big bet for you. And you're also acquiring a bunch of licenses, as you said. I mean, digital gold is already big and now you're going to, acquire an NBFC license and AMC license, and you're also getting into wealth management. So do you see PhonePe becoming a financial services super app or perhaps a financial services company, a holding co, which will have a bunch of these services? Is that the vision you have for PhonePe going forward?
Absolutely. I think PhonePe should get into a range of financial services. we will have to reorganize structurally.
Yeah.
Last year during Diwali, we reorganized the company into 3 business units. So now it's payments and ads, which is the consumer platforms. It's all of financial services, which really is internally already starting to split around insurance, wealth, and lending. And then the third one is around merchant solutions. And you'll see a bunch more that we can do there, including ONDC as a bet. I think societally, there's a need to solve for consumer platforms at scale, at internet scale. India doesn't have enough, and we want to build more. On the merchant and gig side, Gig India, I'm super excited about what Gig India means, right? We were just talking about how markets may not be great for the next couple of years, we're coming out of a bubble. But if you can create a few million gig jobs during that window, that'd be fantastic. If you can work on ONDC and open up digital hyperlocal commerce for all our 30 million merchants, that would be fantastic. So I think the merchant businesses, the financial services and consumer services will play out differently moving forward.
Right. There's also this debate about the actual size of the Indian market. I mean, you have 360 million users. Nitin Kamath told us recently that the actual fintech consumer base in India would be just 10 to 15 crore, which translates to 100 million to 150 million. Do you agree with that? That the actual base is very low, the pie that you have to go after? Because the GDP per capita or the annual income, it stops dropping after the first 150 million.
Nitin is too sharp a man to actually bet against on that number. I think he's got it spot on as far as the wealth sector goes. And I think he's been saying for a while, and we've been calling for a while, that while broking exploded, a lot of it had to do with the fraud that was happening in the market. And
the Robin Hood investors.
It's the Robin Hood investors and very, very similar to the sort of crypto market, right? I mean, there's a lot of fun there as well. But yes, I think that is restricted to about 15 crore, max of maybe 17, 18 crore people. That's just the people who have disposable income to invest forward. I don't think the same is true of insurance. I think post-COVID, a lot of people, if they can get
sachet
product that is
products.
Even I'd say a structured SIP-like product. There's nothing like an SIP for insurance. Think about this. Worldwide, we've all been fed this business that you pay all your premium upfront or on an annual basis, otherwise it lapses. Why can I invest in an SIP on my wealth instruments, but why can't I have a product where I have an insurance cover, and as long as you keep paying, your cover is what it was.
The company's founders, Nigam Rahul Chari and Burzan Engineer, go back more than 20 years. While Engineer is currently based in the US, Nigam and Chari are based in Bengaluru. Before founding PhonePe, the three founded another startup together called Mime 360, which was acquired by Flipkart. The three subsequently joined Flipkart and started working on their second startup, PhonePe, a few years later.
Sameer and Rahul, what also strikes me about PhonePe, it's a very different unicorn. It's not a venture funded unicorn. It grew from Flipkart, and then Flipkart bought it back, and then of course you guys scaled. How did that influence the way you built PhonePe? You could have struck out independently, raised venture money like the others, become a unicorn. But does it also help in the current environment that you have a parent with deep pockets? You have Walmart, the big daddy, to sort of guide you through the current turbulence.
We knew that we were entering a sector where, ambition-wise at least, we wanted to build an internet scale payments company, right? We've been talking about 500 million, 600 million users forever. And at the time at which we were launching, it was digital wallets was equal to digital payments, if you remember. There's a lot of money that have been raised by a lot of companies. They're already on IPL, Freecharge, Paytm, MobiKwik and others. So we actually did raise money, or rather we closed a term sheet with Matrix Capital. Then we had Norvest added on, and then we were talking to a few other funds. And they were nice enough to let us shop, because we told them we need watches going in to compete with the silly money that's already in the sector. Right? It takes a certain amount of capital if you're going that deep. And I think when we started looking at our options, then Binny just became CEO at Flipkart, and Rahul and I spoke to him. We had a long set of discussions. He actually reached out saying, like the fact that you're independent, the group deserves to actually have a play at payments. join back, and we said, okay, but how do we retain independence? And that's how we actually defined the structure. Said it's going to be a fully owned sub. So they're making sure the Flipkart group and its investors very kindly agreed. They said we'll capitalize, but culturally, operationally, we'll just stay completely independent.
Yeah, I remember you guys also had like separate ID cards and all, which
Yeah,
was very...
we still have. We've never had common ID cards. I think what really attracted us, outside of the fact that we still love Flipkart and we are Flipsters for life, was I think there's a lot of advantage to patient capital. I always talk about hustle and technology being very overrated.
Yeah.
If you want to actually build for the long term, build it the right way, you don't want to be continuously trying to raise money and then deliver on that promise to raise more money, especially given that we were in a space that would require capital and we are competing against a lot of possibly large players.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because the idea for PhonePe came out of Flipkart's Big Billion sale when, you know, payments were not going through.
Flight before that for us on the digital payments.
Flight was the music play that we shut down because
Yeah.
microtransactions are very difficult.
One of the best things that we could have done, because as you said, as Rahul said, patient capital is something you need if you're trying to do something that's very, very massy. I think there's a bunch of good venture capitalists in the market, but I do also believe that there's something fundamentally broken with the venture model in the world right now. There is too much money to be deployed and not enough assets to deploy behind.
That's
So
why we
people
are seeing a
almost
lot of
manufacturing
overheated
unicorns.
kind of,
People are manufacturing unicorns just by throwing capital at it for problems that don't need to be solved at times. And we knew that push would come to us. We knew if there's a VC, they would not wait for UPI to launch, say 6 months later. We were betting on a pipe dream.
We built
India
for 9
Stack-
months. 9 months is what we built before we even launched the product. Right?
Because India Stack had just started talking about it. Mr. Raghuram Rajan was doing his first sort of talk about it. RBI was getting engaged. Government hadn't even aligned at that point completely. Then by the summer, the government said this is happening. And it was a long, patient journey. But the wallets were just growing and growing and growing and advertising and marketing. And you could see that it was a VC-fueled market. There's a lot of cashback to get people into the habit of loading the money before spending it. It's just unnatural, right? And I don't think we could have built PhonePe if we hadn't merged back with Flip at that time. And more importantly, convinced their board to just give us patient capital. Walmart is a game changer because they're again like so like steady, Fortune 1, patient capital. They came in 2018, so we were about 2 years live. And I remember they actually asked us for a 10-year model and we were like, don't really have one. They said, try and imagine what it looks like. Right? And it was a very interesting exercise. Our CFO actually built a model, by the way, which is still spot on, which is spooky. But the fact that somebody started talking 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that
thinking
early
about the long term instead of the 7-year VC cycle.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that actually helps in there, Flipkart went through a bit of a change. If you see who's there on the Flipkart cap table, is largely sovereign funds. Again, very long cycles that they can wait on.
And
So
I think the biggest proof of this whole thing is that our stack, our core payment stack, from zero transaction to what we do 100 million transactions a day now, we haven't rewritten it. We haven't re-architected it. And that's a reflection of patient capital and taking a long view, which in today's VC environment is actually getting more and more difficult. It should get easier, it's actually getting more difficult.
But things seem to be changing, at least now VCs are saying, you know, focus on...
I think I think it's necessary, the correction was going to happen. But again, I think it's become too predictable, right? You see this having started in the late 90s in the US with the dot-com boom and then the bust, and then you've seen 2008,
You
you've
either
seen
see a
15.
hyper growth or a...
It's every 7 years. It's almost like they bake it into their 10-year cycle. And so when the going's good, everyone raise as much capital as you can so that the LPs say, oh, you're doing really well, and it's multiple up rounds. And then the founders and the teams are left holding the bag. Now, I'm not making an excuse for founders who are trying to actually like raise crazy valuations, but I'm saying that that system is continuously in stress. And so if you see long-term, durable, profitable businesses in India, it's either the founders who stuck it out completely. We didn't have the capital to deploy $1 billion. And this was stacked in favor of big tech and others who already have the brand equity and the capital. So we went the other extreme. We said, let's start with zero equity base, but let's get long-term capital. and then we'll
Yeah.
actually go incentive based.
This would have been deja vu for you, right? Because even the first time around, you, after engineering and working at different places, you built a startup, Mime 360, and again Flipkart bought it, and you came into the Flipkart system. You started up PhonePe, and Flipkart decided to buy it. So, you know, how has it been like building together for what, 20 years or more?
I think it's been amazing, right? Frankly, the most important thing between founders when you start any company is the level of trust that you can have on each other, right? We have our disagreements, fights, but at the end of it, we make a call jointly and we trust each other immensely. And it's always worked out. I think the bigger thing is we are both, and Burzen, our co-founder, we are all engineers at heart. We actually get the value of technology, the potential of technology, and how technology can definitely change the landscape. I think that is extremely important. Sameer, as the CEO, being so deeply in technology really helps me as the CTO to be able to actually take the right view in building our stacks, building the product out.
Do you guys, you know, carve out time to spend just with each other? Maybe once a week, you do a lunch or you do a dinner or you hang out one day in a week?
We don't need to. I think we meet.
You don't need to.
Weekends are, I think, stubbornly and sacredly for home and family. So I think one nice thing with PhonePe, probably was age, we're getting closer to 40. We said we won't work weekends. After the first UPI launch, I think that's the only time we pulled a few weekenders. I don't think we've actually come into office.
As a rule, right? We said that we're not going to be that company that continuously burns the midnight oil. We're not going to call people over weekends. It's not worth it, right? To have a happy team that is concentrated on building things the right way.
Because there is a sense startup, you know, it's a very intense kind of culture where people are at it.
I think there's a certain romanticism to that,
Yeah.
that says that this is how startups should be operating and that's where you learn. You don't necessarily need it. When you actually if you look back a year, any startup that has tried and done that versus a startup who's worked like us, the net impact is possibly higher on our side. We are very prolific. For our size, we continue to be extremely prolific in all the features that we roll out, the growth that we see. You don't need to have that kind of hustle. You can, as long as you think through things and plan it better.
Hustle and this blitzscaling is overrated.
Smart work is underrated in the startup ecosystem, has been forever. It's not that hard work is not important, but I think hustling after what you're focusing on is important. Amplifying something that's taking off at the right time is very important. Versus saying, I'm just sort of in the rat race, just spinning in the wheel, and it's just to what end?
By the way, on that one, the hustle part of it, he'd probably be the only CEO. I think the only CEO who will keep telling people, do less. Don't do this. Let's stop this. We can do it later. Let's serialize it. Most people are trying to actually do as many things in parallel as possible. He's the one who keeps saying that no need. Kam karte hain, acha karte hain.
True.
I think it's like, let's do less, but let's nail it.
Yeah.
Quality has to keep improving. And that's, I think, with any company that gets to scale, right? You don't want to put out bad beta products. You want to put out good products.
Sameer, let's also talk about the path to profitability. PhonePe is still loss-making, but now you're diversifying your offerings. You're entering insurance. You're interested in wealth management, AMC, and so on. So, will that help you shore up revenues? Achieve profits in the short term? What's your plan?
We look at our business in two parts. There's the core of payments and advertising around it. That one's well on its way to profitability. We hope we'll get there sometime by 2023. That is, in fact, one of the key milestones we've been tracking. And then there's a whole slew of new businesses that we're entering, a lot of them in financial services, but also a couple of all bets like ONDC, gig platforms. So these are all bets where we still don't know what the size and potential can be, but these are all, again, very large open markets. And we believe that that's where the new revenue streams will come from. So on payments, because now it's at scale, we're leading the market, we believe that we should be focused on the bottom line. With all of the rest, it's actually top line focus and early sort of growth focus.
I also read that you also have listing plans or IPO plans. You're registered in Singapore, but you're planning to create a holding company in India and then go ahead with the IPO. So again, where do those plans stand, and are you a little worried going by the response that some of the new age IPOs have gotten in the last year? Paytm hasn't done too well so far. So is that a worry for you if you look at an India listing?
So I'll answer that three parts. First, you asked if we have plans. Absolutely do. We'd file for our PN3 application. We are coming to India. That's a given. We are coming to India, holding company from Singapore to India, and we will list here. That's a given. Board has already signed off on it. It's a matter of time.
When did this happen?
This was a while back. We've said this publicly before already. I think coming to India, we are a made in India company. Every single office we have, every single data center, every single server we have, and every employee is Indian. So there's no reason why we should not contribute to wealth creation in this market. That's point number one. Second, we are too heavily regulated, and correctly so, to want to be abroad. We need to abide by the laws here. We play by the laws here. We play by the rules and regulations here. So I think it is time for us to move here. There are several challenges with moving to India, as a lot of unicorns might have told you. I think the ESOP laws are extremely anti-employee. I think we need to get those fixed. We will send our feedback on how this process has been for us as just one of the players to the government, and just explain to them we're making it very hard for entrepreneurs to actually bring large companies back to India. It should be much easier.
Any timeline that you have, Sameer, on when you plan to list?
No, I think we've said this before. We want to be profitable in our core payments business, and we
so
still
you
want
said
to
2023 is
hopefully
when you
there.
yeah.
That's one. Second, we want to be in a place where a bunch of our new age initiatives, fintech, ONDC, account aggregator, a bunch of these businesses have achieved sufficient product market match and scale where our revenue pools are diversified enough. I think that will be important by the time we go public. I don't want to raise public money to experiment wildly. I think we have very, very good stable investors who are giving us that luxury. I'd rather experiment now and go in with a more stable story. That's one of the learnings actually at the IPO. Don't raise all the money for speculative bets. Place the bets beforehand if you can afford to.
On that note, I think we should end with a quick rapid fire. Flipkart or Walmart?
Completely different. Flipster for life. Walmart just learning how to build for the long run.
Payments or insurance?
Payments still.
NSE or NASDAQ?
NSE.
The best advice you've received?
The value should define the valuation. The valuation is not the way to measure your value. Took me 20 years to understand that.
Your leadership style?
Energetic, transparency over trust, and trust very, very deeply in people I work with. Let them make their own mistakes.
Friend?
Rahul.
An entrepreneur you look up to?
Nitin Kamath. Sanjeev Bikhchandani.
Your favorite city?
The heart still has Mumbai there, but Bangalore is just amazing.
On that note, thank you very much, Sameer, for talking to us on Bits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chandra.